Marc Andreessen barefoot on the cover of Time magazine at 24. Worth billions overnight. The golden boy of the internet age, grinning like he just pulled off the greatest heist in history. And maybe he had. This was 1995. The Netscape IPO had just broken Wall Street. A company that gave away its product for free somehow became worth more than most Fortune 500 companies. The dot-com era was born in that moment, and so was something much darker. Because the kid from small-town Wisconsin who democratized the internet would eventually become the man who owns it. The story begins in 1993 at the University of Illinois. A 22-year-old computer science student named Marc Andreessen was earning $6.85 an hour at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications. His job? Writing code for something called the World Wide Web. Most people had never heard of it. The internet existed, sure, but it was a nightmare to use. Text-only terminals. Command line interfaces. You needed a computer science degree just to send an email. The web was this theoretical thing that academics talked about. A way to link documents together using something called hypertext. Tim Berners-Lee had created the basic protocols, but his browser was primitive. Text only. And it only worked on expensive Next computers that cost $6,000 each. Marc saw the problem immediately. The web was brilliant, but it was trapped in academic isolation. Regular people couldn't use it. They couldn't even see it. So he did something that would change everything. He created Mosaic, the first web browser that could display images in line with text. The first browser that worked on regular PCs and Macs. The first browser that anyone could actually use. But here's what nobody talks about. Marc didn't just create a browser. He made a choice that would echo through history. He picked the colors for hyperlinks. Blue for unvisited links, purple for visited ones. Seems trivial, right? Wrong. That simple decision created the visual language of the internet. Every website you've ever visited follows Marc's color scheme. Every click you've ever made follows his design. He literally programmed how humanity would navigate the digital world. The NCSA released Mosaic for free in early 1993. Within months, web traffic exploded by 342,000%. The number of websites went from 50 to 10,000 almost overnight. Marc had given the world fire. But the university didn't care. They refused to give the Mosaic team credit. They treated Marc like just another student worker. So in 1994, he quit and moved to California. That's where he met Jim Clark. Clark was a Silicon Graphics founder with money to burn and a vision for the future. He'd been watching Mosaic's success from afar. When he met Marc, he asked a simple question. What if we built a commercial version? They called it Netscape. But here's the thing. They didn't use any Mosaic code. They built it from scratch. Marc and his team worked 18-hour days, fueled by pizza and the belief they were creating the future. They called their browser Mozilla, short for Mosaic Killer. The goal was domination. Netscape Navigator launched in December 1994. It was faster than Mosaic, more stable, more features. And crucially, it was free for personal use. Within 4 months, Netscape had captured 75% of the browser market. Marc wasn't just winning, he was obliterating the competition. But the real genius wasn't the technology, it was the strategy. Marc understood something that nobody else did. The browser wasn't just software. It was real estate. Digital real estate. Control the browser, and you control how people experience the internet. You control what they see first, where they go, what they buy. Every startup page, every bookmark, every default search engine. These weren't just features, they were revenue streams. By 1995, Netscape Navigator had 90% market share. Marc had built the most successful software product in history, and he was about to take it public. The Netscape IPO on August 9, 1995, was supposed to price at $14 per share, but demand was so insane they doubled it to $28 at the last minute. On the first day of trading, it hit $75. Marc Andreessen, the kid who'd been making minimum wage 2 years earlier, was suddenly worth $58 million. At 24, he was the youngest person ever to appear on the cover of Time magazine. But success attracts predators, and the biggest predator in tech had been watching. Bill Gates had a problem. It was May 1995, and the richest man in the world was staring at a memo that would change everything. The subject line read, "The Internet Tidal Wave," and it was about to destroy his empire. The Internet is the most important single development to come along since the IBM PC was introduced in 1981, Gates wrote to his executives. It is even more important than the arrival of the graphical user interface. This wasn't just corporate strategy. This was panic. Microsoft had missed the internet completely. While Marc was building Mosaic at the University of Illinois, Gates was focused on Windows 95 and the desktop. The internet seemed like a nerdy academic toy. Who needed a web browser when you had Microsoft Office? But Netscape's explosive growth changed everything. Suddenly, people were spending more time in their browser than in Windows applications. The browser was becoming the new operating system, and Microsoft didn't have one. Gates realized the terrifying truth. If people could do everything through a web browser, they wouldn't need Windows anymore. Netscape wasn't just a software company. It was an existential threat to Microsoft's monopoly. So Gates did what he always did when threatened. He declared war. The strategy was vintage Microsoft: embrace, extend, extinguish. First, embrace the technology by creating a competing product. Then, extend it with proprietary features that lock users into your ecosystem. Finally, extinguish the competition by leveraging your existing monopoly. Microsoft had one massive advantage: Windows. Every PC sold came with Windows pre-installed. If they could bundle their browser with Windows, they could bypass Netscape's head start entirely. The problem? They didn't have a browser. So they bought one. Microsoft licensed Mosaic technology from a company called Spyglass for a few $1 million. They rebranded it as Internet Explorer and started the most ruthless campaign in tech history. Internet Explorer started life as Internet Explorer 1, launched in August 1995, just days after Netscape's IPO. It was terrible, slow, buggy, missing basic features. But Gates didn't care about quality, he cared about distribution. Microsoft started giving Internet Explorer away for free, not just to consumers, to everyone: businesses, schools, government agencies. They undercut Netscape's $99 commercial licenses by offering their browser at zero cost. But that was just the beginning. Gates personally flew to computer manufacturers around the world: Dell, Compaq, Gateway. His message was simple: bundle Internet Explorer with Windows or lose your Windows license. For PC makers, This wasn't a choice. It was extortion with a smile. Then came the real masterstroke. Internet Explorer 3.0 in 1996. Microsoft had spent over $100 million and assigned 1,000 engineers to browser development. They reverse-engineered every Netscape feature and added dozens of their own. JavaScript support, CSS styling, ActiveX controls. For the first time, Internet Explorer was actually competitive. But the distribution strategy was what killed Netscape. Microsoft didn't just bundle IE with new computers, they integrated it directly into Windows. Want to browse your files? You're using Internet Explorer. Want to access help documentation? Internet Explorer. Want to update Windows? Internet Explorer. They made it impossible to remove. Netscape fought back with innovation. They created JavaScript, the programming language that powers every modern website. They pioneered SSL encryption for secure transactions. They built the first serious email client integrated with a browser. It didn't matter. By 1997, Internet Explorer had captured 30% of the market. Netscape's stock price was collapsing. Developers started building websites specifically for Internet Explorer, abandoning Netscape users entirely. Marc watched his empire crumble in real time. The company that had gone from $0 to $3 billion in 18 months was hemorrhaging money. They laid off hundreds of employees. Morale imploded. The browser wars weren't about technology anymore. They were about raw power, and Microsoft had more power than anyone in the history of computing. In 1998, the Department of Justice finally sued Microsoft for antitrust violations. The trial exposed internal emails where Microsoft executives discussed cutting off Netscape's air supply and eliminating the competition. But it was too late. By the time the case concluded, Internet Explorer had 90% market share. Netscape was dead. Marc's dream of an open, competitive internet had been crushed by monopolistic force. The browser that democratized the web had been destroyed by the very company that controlled the desktop. But Marc Andreessen wasn't finished. He was just getting started, and his next move would be far more dangerous than anyone imagined. November 24th, 1998. AOL announced it would acquire Netscape for $4.2 billion. $4.2 billion for a company that Microsoft had supposedly killed. The headlines called it a rescue, a lifeline for the fallen browser king. But Marc knew better. This wasn't salvation. It was a funeral with a big check attached. AOL didn't want Netscape's technology. They wanted its brand, its user base, its portal traffic. The browser that had once threatened Microsoft's empire was about to become a marketing tool for dial-up internet subscriptions. The acquisition closed in March 1999, valued at $10 billion thanks to AOL's inflated stock price. But the real story wasn't the money, it was what happened next. AOL gutted Netscape like a fish. The engineering teams that had built Navigator were scattered. Some went to other companies. Others joined the newly formed Mozilla project, trying to keep the browser's open-source spirit alive. The Netscape campus in Mountain View became a ghost town. Marc found himself in the strangest position of his career. He was officially AOL's Chief Technology Officer, worth hundreds of millions on paper. But he had no real power, no team, no product to build. He was a figurehead in his own revolution. The browser wars were over, and Microsoft had won so completely that they stopped trying. Internet Explorer 6 launched in 2001, and then nothing. Microsoft disbanded most of their browser team. Why innovate when you own 95% of the market? the web stagnated for years. CSS support was broken. JavaScript performance was terrible. Web standards were ignored. The internet that Marc had envisioned, open, competitive, constantly improving, had become a Microsoft monopoly managing decline. But the real tragedy wasn't technical, it was philosophical. Marc had created Netscape to democratize information, to give everyone equal access to the world's knowledge, to break down barriers between people and ideas. Instead, he'd watched a monopolist strangle that dream in its crib. The psychological impact was devastating. Marc had gone from Time magazine covers to corporate irrelevance in less than 4 years. The golden boy of the internet age was now just another AOL executive watching his life's work get dismantled for parts. Friends from the Netscape days describe Marc during this period as angry, disillusioned. Obsessed with understanding what had gone wrong, he started reading voraciously. Economics, political theory, history. He was trying to decode the deeper patterns of power that had destroyed his company. What he discovered would reshape everything. Marc realized that Netscape's failure wasn't about technology. It wasn't even about business strategy. It was about understanding power itself. Microsoft hadn't won because Internet Explorer was better. They'd won because they controlled the distribution channel. They owned the pipes. And whoever owns the pipes controls everything that flows through them. This was Marc's first lesson in what he would later call the real rules of Silicon Valley. Innovation doesn't matter if you don't control distribution. Great products don't matter if you can't reach customers. Vision doesn't matter if you don't have leverage. The idealistic kid who'd wanted to democratize the internet was learning to think like a monopolist. By 2002, Marc had had enough. He resigned from AOL and started planning his comeback. But this time would be different. This time, he wouldn't just build great technology and hope for the best. This time, he would build power first. The failure of Netscape had taught Marc Andreessen the most dangerous lesson in Silicon Valley. If you can't beat the system, you have to become the system. And that's exactly what he did. Marc Andreessen disappeared from public view for 7 years. While the tech world moved on from the browser wars, Marc was quietly building something far more powerful than any single product. He was constructing an empire that would make Netscape look like a lemonade stand. The first piece fell into place in 2007. Marc and his former Netscape colleague Ben Horowitz founded a company called Opsware. It wasn't glamorous, enterprise software for managing data centers. But it taught Marc something crucial about the new rules of Silicon Valley. Opsware sold to Hewlett-Packard for $1.6 billion. Not bad for a company most people had never heard of. But the real education wasn't the exit. It was watching how venture capital worked from the inside. VCs weren't just investors. They were kingmakers. They decided which companies got funding and which died in obscurity. They sat on boards, shaped strategy, and controlled the flow of talent across the entire ecosystem. Marc realized he'd been playing the wrong game his entire career. Building great products was amateur hour. The real power was in controlling the money that funded those products. So in 2009, Marc and Ben launched Andreessen Horowitz with $300 million in initial capital. But this wasn't your typical venture capital firm. Marc had studied the VC model and found it fundamentally broken. Traditional VCs were passive investors who wrote checks and hoped for the best. They had networks, sure, but they didn't actively help their portfolio companies win. Marc designed A16Z to be different. They called it a talent agency for tech. Instead of just providing money, A16Z provided everything a startup needed to dominate its market. Executive recruiting from their network of former founders. business development deals with their portfolio companies, PR and marketing through their media connections, technical talent through their engineering network. They weren't just investors, they were ecosystem architects. The early wins established their reputation fast. Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, Pinterest. Companies that would define the next generation of the internet. But the real genius wasn't picking winners. It was creating network effects between them. A16Z portfolio companies hired executives from other A16Z companies. They integrated their products together. They shared user data and growth strategies. Marc had built something unprecedented. A venture capital firm that functioned like a monopolistic platform. By 2012, they were managing $2.7 billion across 3 funds. By 2021, that number had grown to over $35 billion. But the money was just the visible part of their power. The invisible part was far more dangerous. A16Z had created what Marc called the network state. A shadow government of tech companies that operated according to their values, not democratic oversight. Their portfolio companies controlled social media, transportation, housing, finance, and commerce. They didn't need to lobby Congress. They were building the infrastructure that would make Congress irrelevant. Marc's transformation was complete. The idealistic kid who'd wanted to democratize the internet had become the puppet master pulling its strings. But he justified it with a simple philosophy. If you can't beat power, you have to become power. The Netscape experience had taught him that good intentions weren't enough. Innovation wasn't enough. Vision wasn't enough. In Silicon Valley, only leverage mattered, and A16Z had more leverage than any institution in the history of technology. They could make or break entire industries with a single investment decision. They could elevate unknown founders to billionaire status overnight. They could destroy competitors by funding their rivals. Marc had learned the most important lesson in modern capitalism. Don't build products that monopolists can crush. Become the monopolist yourself. But power, once acquired, demands to be used. And Marc was about to use his in ways that would shock even his closest allies. The man who'd given the world the internet was about to show everyone who really owned it. Marc Andreessen published what he called his Techno-Optimist Manifesto. 14,000 words of pure Silicon Valley ideology dressed up as philosophy. Technology is the glory of human ambition and achievement, he wrote. We believe technology is the solution to human problems, and we want to build a world where technology can flourish. The tech press ate it up. Here was Marc, the elder statesman of Silicon Valley, offering a vision of unlimited progress through innovation. No regulations, no restrictions, just pure technological acceleration toward a better future. But read between the lines and you'll find something much darker. The manifesto wasn't really about technology. It was about power. Marc's power, and his plan to use it. He called his enemies deceleration forces, environmentalists who wanted to slow climate change, regulators who wanted to oversee AI development, politicians who questioned big tech's monopolistic practices. According to Marc, these people weren't just wrong. They were evil, enemies of human progress who needed to be defeated. We believe any deceleration of AI will cost lives, he wrote. Deaths that were preventable by the AI that was prevented from existing is a form of murder. Murder. That's how Marc Andreessen describes disagreeing with his investment thesis. But the manifesto revealed something even more troubling: Marc's complete transformation from internet idealist to techno-authoritarian. He quoted fascist philosophers like Giovanni Gentile and Filippo Marinetti, the founder of Italian futurism, who inspired Mussolini's regime. He praised great men who reshape society through force of will, regardless of democratic consent. The message was clear: democracy is too slow for the technological future Marc envisions. Regular people are too stupid to understand what's best for them. Only tech elites like him should decide humanity's direction. This wasn't just philosophical posturing. Marc was laying the intellectual groundwork for something unprecedented in American history: a techno-oligarchy ruled by venture capital. The signs were everywhere if you knew how to look. A16Z had been quietly funding political campaigns through crypto-focused super PACs. They'd invested in charter cities and special economic zones designed to operate outside normal democratic governance. They'd backed companies building autonomous weapons systems and surveillance infrastructure. Marc wasn't just building a business empire. He was building the infrastructure for a post-democratic society. The housing crisis revealed his true priorities. While preaching about innovation solving human problems, Marc spent millions fighting affordable housing construction in his own neighborhood. His reasoning? Density would lower his property values. The man who claimed technology would save humanity couldn't tolerate poor people living near his mansion. But the real mask-off moment came during the 2024 election cycle. Marc, who'd spent years donating to Democrats, suddenly switched sides and started funding Donald Trump's campaign. Why? Because the Biden administration had suggested regulating cryptocurrency and AI development. They'd proposed antitrust enforcement against big tech. They'd threatened the very power structure that made Marc one of the most influential people on Earth. So Marc declared war on democracy itself. He started spreading conspiracy theories about debanking crypto entrepreneurs. He claimed the government was persecuting tech innovators. He painted himself and his fellow billionaires as victims of an authoritarian state. The irony was stunning. The man building actual authoritarian infrastructure was crying about government tyranny because regulators wanted basic oversight of his investments. But Marc's political transformation wasn't really about ideology. It was about preserving his empire. A16Z had grown so large and influential that democratic accountability posed an existential threat. If voters could actually control technology development through elected representatives, Marc's power would evaporate overnight. So he chose oligarchy over democracy, techno-authoritarianism over human agency. The manifesto wasn't a philosophy. It was a declaration of independence from democratic society. Marc Andreessen, the man who democratized the internet, had become its greatest threat. He'd built a shadow empire that operated beyond democratic control, funded technologies that could reshape civilization, and promoted an ideology that justified unlimited power for tech elites. The kid from Wisconsin who'd wanted to give everyone access to information had become the man who decided what information everyone could access. And he was just getting started. By 2024, Andreessen Horowitz managed $35 billion in assets. But the real number that mattered was different. It was the number of lives they controlled. Their portfolio companies weren't just investments, they were the infrastructure of modern civilization. Facebook shaped how 3 billion people communicated. Coinbase controlled America's cryptocurrency markets. Instacart delivered groceries to millions of families. Roblox entertained an entire generation of children. Clubhouse influenced political discourse during the pandemic. Marc hadn't just built a venture capital firm. he'd built a shadow government. And like any government, it had three branches of power. The executive branch was A16Z itself. They made the decisions about which technologies got funded and which died in obscurity. They controlled the flow of capital that determined the direction of innovation across entire industries. The legislative branch was their network of portfolio companies. These weren't independent businesses competing in free markets. They were coordinated entities operating according to A16Z's strategic vision. When Marc wanted to promote cryptocurrency adoption, dozens of his companies suddenly integrated crypto payments. When he wanted to undermine traditional media, his portfolio companies launched competing platforms. The judicial branch was their influence over regulation itself. A16Z had perfected the art of regulatory capture without traditional lobbying. Instead of bribing politicians, they created the technological facts on the ground that made regulation impossible. How do you regulate Facebook when it's already integrated into the daily lives of billions? How do you control cryptocurrency when it's already embedded in the global financial system? How do you oversee AI when the technology is advancing faster than lawmakers can understand it? Marc had learned the ultimate lesson in power. Don't fight the system, make the system irrelevant. But the most insidious part wasn't what A16Z controlled, it was how they controlled it. Traditional monopolies were obvious. Standard Oil owned refineries. AT&T owned phone lines. Microsoft owned operating systems. You could see their power and fight it. A16Z's power was invisible. They didn't own the companies they controlled. They just influenced them. They didn't dictate government policy. They just made alternative policies impossible. They didn't censor information. They just shaped which information got created and distributed. It was monopoly through network effects rather than direct ownership, and it was far more dangerous than anything that came before. The revolving door between A16Z and government revealed the true scope of their influence. Former Obama administration officials joined A16Z as partners. Former A16Z executives took senior roles in regulatory agencies. The line between Silicon Valley and Washington had completely dissolved. When Marc wanted to kill crypto regulations, he didn't need to lobby Congress. His former employees were already inside the agencies writing the rules. When he wanted to promote AI development, he didn't need to fund think tanks. His portfolio companies were already providing the research that shaped policy debates. The system wasn't corrupt. The system was A16Z. Marc's political transformation made perfect sense in this context. He hadn't suddenly become conservative. He'd simply recognized that democracy posed an existential threat to his empire. Democratic governments could regulate his companies. They could break up his monopolies. They could redistribute his wealth. They could hold him accountable for the social consequences of his investments. So Marc chose to eliminate democracy as a constraint on his power. His support for Donald Trump wasn't ideological, it was strategic. Trump represented chaos and incompetence in government. The weaker democratic institutions became, the stronger Marc's shadow empire grew. When traditional media criticized big tech, Marc funded alternative media platforms. When universities taught students to question capitalism, he funded alternative education systems. When governments tried to regulate technology, he funded alternative governance structures. He was building a parallel civilization that operated according to his values rather than democratic consensus. The scariest part? It was working. Young people increasingly got their news from A16Z-funded platforms. They worked for A16Z portfolio companies. They lived in housing developed by A16Z-backed real estate firms. They invested through A16Z-funded financial services. Marc had achieved something no monopolist in history had managed: total vertical integration of human experience. He didn't just control technology. He controlled the environment in which technology was developed, discussed, and deployed. He controlled the narrative about what technology meant for society. The man who'd given the world the internet had become its ultimate landlord, and the rent was democracy itself. The transformation was complete by 2025. Marc Andreessen had gone from giving away browsers for free to charging rent on digital infrastructure. Every app on your phone, every website you visit, every transaction you make, somewhere in that chain, Marc gets a cut. It's the perfect crime. He doesn't own the internet. He just owns the companies that control access to it. Think about your daily digital life. You wake up and check Instagram, owned by Meta, where Marc sits on the board. You order coffee through DoorDash, a 16Z portfolio company. You pay with your Coinbase card, another A16Z investment. You listen to Clubhouse during your commute, funded by Marc. You work on software hosted by GitHub, which A16Z helped build before Microsoft bought it. By lunch, you've enriched Marc Andreessen a dozen times without realizing it. But the real genius isn't the individual investments, it's how they work together. A16Z doesn't just fund competing companies, they fund complementary ecosystems. Their social media platforms drive traffic to their e-commerce companies. Their financial services integrate with their marketplace businesses. Their AI tools power their productivity software. It's vertical integration disguised as venture capital. The boy who wanted to democratize information became the man who monetized every byte of it. And the irony runs deeper than most people realize. The same hyperlinks Marc colored blue in 1993, the ones that created the visual language of the web, now generate revenue every time you click them. He didn't just invent web navigation, he invented web taxation. Every click is a toll, every scroll is a fee, every share is a commission. Marc turned the internet into the world's most efficient rent extraction machine. And he did it so elegantly that we thank him for the privilege. The free and open web he once championed? It's still free to use, but it's no longer free to control. Marc owns the infrastructure. He sets the rules. He decides what gets built and what gets buried. The internet became exactly what he said it would never become: a centralized system controlled by a small group of powerful gatekeepers. The difference is that now Marc is the gatekeeper. He didn't just survive Silicon Valley's brutal game of monopolistic capitalism. He learned to play it better than anyone who came before him. The kid from Wisconsin who gave the world its first glimpse of digital freedom became the man who figured out how to profit from every pixel of it. The question isn't whether Marc Andreessen changed the world. The question is whether the world can survive what he's changed it into. The boy who wanted to free the internet became the man who owns it. Marc Andreessen didn't just survive Silicon Valley's brutal game. He learned to play it better than anyone else.